The capital of Colombia gets its first openly gay female mayor. A pastor in Trinidad struggles to explain how he came to have over $4 million in cash. And why one Pacific Island state thinks banning sunscreen could help save its reefs. Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, and this is From the South. We start in Colombia, where Claudia Lopez has been sworn in as Bogota's first female mayor. Lopez arrived on a bicycle for the inauguration ceremony, which took place in the Simón Bolívar Square. Lopez is also the first openly gay woman to be elected mayor of Bogota. She was voted into office with a record 1.1 million votes, or 35% of the ballot. She said that during her time in office, she will focus on fighting corruption and impunity and will work to improve healthcare and education.
Claudia Lopez is the first woman to become mayor of Bogota, starting on the first day of 2020. She's taken the reins of one of Colombia's most important cities, as what many consider the second most important political job in the nation.
After a disastrous mayoral term under Enrique Peñalosa, Lopez's arrival is a breath of fresh air for Bogota. There are 8 million people in this city, and many of them live in extreme poverty. So we hope to see a restart of social programs to rebalance government spending.
Born in Bogota in 1970, the daughter of a teacher and the oldest of 6 brothers, Claudia Lopez was active in the Séptima Papeleta, a student movement which paved the way for the 1991 Constituent Assembly. She was a researcher for Colombia's Electoral Observation Mission and many other organizations that work to unveil links between politicians and paramilitary forces. She was elected as senator for the Green Party for the 2014-2018 term, and in that position she was able to push through a law that benefited domestic workers.
Claudia is taking power with an agenda full of important changes for the city. She wants to move the city forward in matters of mobility, of security, of social rights, all coming from a very human perspective.
She actively promoted an anti-corruption referendum in 2018 that sought to cut the salaries of lawmakers. Now, she enters Bogota's mayoral office with the idea of implementing more just and inclusive politics.
We all know Claudia Lopez uncovered a lot of fraud in the system. She wants to lead a government with no corruption.
I think she was the best choice. Putting aside the fact she's a woman or that she's gay, those things have no relevance for what the city needs.
I hope she fulfills her promises, that we can walk safely on the streets, to enjoy time with our families. I hope she does this because we are used to politicians who don't keep their promises.
The expectations for Claudia Lopez are high, in particular when it comes to issues like violence against women and access to education. She has already guaranteed over 20,000 new quotas for free access to Bogota's district university.
Shifting gears now, thousands of Chilean demonstrators gathered at Santiago's Plaza Italia on Tuesday night to welcome a new year with dignity. They cooked a collective New Year's Eve meal and listened to a concert by a number of artists who have been supporting the protests. They also paid tribute to Mauricio Fredes, a protester who died a few days ago when he fell into an open manhole and drowned. Citizens have been protesting daily since October against the government of Sebastián Piñera and his neoliberal economic model. They want the establishment of a constituent assembly to draft a new constitution, as well as better access to healthcare and education.
I am motivated by the union of the people, who are committed to the population and who are all united by a cause to get out of this hole which we are in.
It's really nice to be committed to the cause. We want this year to be better, to be listened to, and for Chile to progress, because we want better things.
Now, what had been an entirely peaceful night of celebrations ended in repression early on New Year's Day. The police used tear gas to disperse the small groups of revelers who were still in the square. During the protests, at least 27 people have been killed in clashes with security forces. In some Caribbean news, a Trinidadian pastor must explain his wealth to a magistrate after police seized US $4.3 million in TT $100 bills from his possession. Longdonville preacher Vinworth Dale went to a financial institution to change the old $100 notes to polymer ones, as stipulated by the government in amendments to the Proceeds of Crime and Central Bank legislation. Citizens were given a December 31st deadline to do so. The government said the move was to combat money laundering, counterfeiting, tax evasion, and other criminal activities. Jamaica's opposition leader says he will be advocating for a 60% increase in the minimum wage, which stands at US $53 a week.
With the significant fall in the value of the Jamaican dollar and the rise in the price of basic items, the low wages keep many workers poor, as does the increasingly widespread practice of treating many full-time workers as contract workers, and thus deny them the fair wages and benefits to which they would otherwise be entitled. Today, I'm giving notice that the opposition will be demanding and fighting for the minimum wage to be increased to $12,500.
Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Scarrett has condemned the actions of secondary school principals who withhold students' report cards as a result of failure to pay school fees. He said this is contrary to the country's laws.
We have to review our education system. And let me warn the school principals in Dominica. The last time I checked, secondary education in Dominica is free. And schools have come about and they're charging students fees. And now they're saying to the students and their parents that if you do not pay these fees, you won't get your report card. Well, let me say to them that this action is contrary to the laws of Dominica. And let me say to them, it's going to stop, because education in Dominica is free to our children.
Democratic presidential candidate Julian Castro has ended his 2020 White House bid. In a tweet, Castro said, "It's with profound gratitude to all of our supporters that I suspend my campaign for president today." He added that he would keep fighting for an America where everyone counts. Castro was the only Latino contender and served as a minister in Barack Obama's cabinet. The former mayor of San Antonio, Texas, had struggled to raise his profile, teetering at 2% in the polls. Coming up, things are shaping up for Tunisians as the formation of a cabinet seems near. Stay with us as we unpack this and more.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis, and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en la I.
Dot in the I. Saturdays, only on Telesur. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Migration continues to be one of the main topics of discussion in Mexico. This after the government was forced to implement a plan to reduce the flow of migrants in Central America after a threat by U.S. President Donald Trump.
Migrants from Honduras, Guatemala and El Salvador continue to be seen in the south of the country where human trafficking is a profitable business.
There is nothing we can do from here. This is a business that will not stop. It's like a clock that needs all the pieces to work.
In 2019, 41,000 migrants were rescued from buses or trucks as they tried to make their way to the U.S. More than 200 traffickers were arrested. Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard explained that the government's measures have been effective in reducing the flow of undocumented migrants traveling to the U.S. by 70%.
The number of people seeking refuge has increased by 10%, and no one has been denied. All we ask is that they be honest. We'll probably reach 60,000 refugees, which will be the largest figure in 10 years.
As such, the number of people seeking refuge has decreased from 144,000 to 42,000 in 6 months. This is as a consequence of U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to impose a 5% tariff on Mexican goods.
We were able to reach an agreement in order to prevent a trade war that would not have benefited anyone.
In addition to the hundreds of Central American migrants who arrive in the country daily, the Mexican government also assists those who have camped at the border while awaiting an answer on their asylum requests from the U.S.
So amazing to see so many different people from so many walks of life come together for the shared mission of supporting the migrants here in Tijuana.
In order to treat with the migratory crisis, Mexican authorities have designated $30 million towards social and work programs at its southern and northern borders. The country is hoping to create employment for the youth.
The Tunisian Prime Minister has formed a new government. Prime Minister Habib Djemli announced that he had submitted a proposed cabinet composed of non-partisan candidates after failing to agree with other political parties on forming a coalition. The list of cabinet ministers is being presented to Parliament for approval. This comes nearly 3 months after an election in which no party took more than a quarter of the seats, leading to negotiations to build a coalition.
When I say we'll form a government of independence, there must be unanimity on their independence and competence for us to be able to present it to the Parliament. I won't form the government alone in my office. There's a consultation and there are ministers who are going to keep their jobs, provided they are independent and have integrity.
Cameroon has celebrated its 60th independence anniversary. The country gained independence from France on January 1st, 1960, becoming the first African nation to be free from colonization. The ruling party, Cameroon's People's Democratic Movement, led the liberation struggle, which won the nation its independence. The Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, has started 2020 as the new chairman of the Caribbean Community CARICOM for the next 6 months. In her New Year message, Mottley outlined her plans to address regional issues.
We are duty-bound to continue this journey across the community, whether as a collective of the whole or in twos and threes where we are gathered, in a way that will, 1, remove the obstacles to passport-free movement between our nations. 2, make it easier for Caribbean people to go and work where there are opportunities in the community in a way that is hassle-free, in the same way that we have done it for the movement of capital. In keeping with our own Errol Barrow's vision, the reality of our people must not only be a lived reality, but also a legal reality. The Caribbean community, indeed, must lead the world in shaping an environment within which migrants among us can live and work with dignity. For after all, our modern settlement in the Caribbean has been nothing but that of a community of migrants. 3, to truly advance the process of a single domestic space for transport and communications in our region by working to provide more affordable and reliable air and sea links between our countries, and also to establish a single domestic rate for telephone, telecommunications, and phone calls within CARICOM. 4, to work with the private sector and the labour movement to provide further opportunities beyond transport and communications mentioned above, to food security, to opportunities in the blue economy or renewable energy and ICT for our people, opportunities for investment and for employment. 5, enable us as we face the climate crisis to pool the funds of the region in order to be able to finance our own development trajectory for sustainable development so that we may adapt to the new realities of this climate crisis.
Moving on, spectacular fireworks lit up the sky as the world marked the beginning of a new decade. As many as 3 million revelers rang in the new year at Rio de Janeiro's famed Copacabana beach, according to local media. As the clock struck midnight, a massive fireworks display brought joy to those present. China's display was much quieter but equally spectacular. Nearly 2,000 drones took to the sky and illuminated the Huangpu River. At around midnight, the drones gathered to become a running man. It moved forward, showing the huge changes and glorious achievements Shanghai and Beijing have made in the past 40 years of reform and opening up. And over in Europe, London welcomed in the new year with a fireworks extravaganza over Big Ben. The city's mayor had promised the display would be the best the British capital has ever seen. London's display featured more than 12,000 fireworks, according to the mayor's office. The state of Illinois began the first day of the year 2020 with the legal sale of recreational marijuana, with a considerable number of consumers in line at dispensaries. Illinois has become U.S. state number 11 in allowing the sale and consumption of marijuana for recreational purposes. Until now, marijuana had only been legalized for medicinal purposes. The dispensaries began to operate from 6 o'clock in the morning. In the stores, people can now purchase all types of marijuana products, from herbs to cannabis chocolates, gummies, oils, and other products.
Super fun. I just thought, today's like part of history for Chicago. Why not come be a part of it early? I was up for New Year's Eve, so.
It's incredible. It's incredible. I just can't believe we're finally here. So I'm really excited, and I know everybody that I know is really excited as well. It was a little surreal. It was a little crazy. Like, I'm walking to the counter and there's cameras everywhere and it's showing me I'm buying weed. I'm buying legal cannabis. This is just unbelievable.
Well, I've been a long time weed smoker, and it's very exciting to legally go buy it at the store and be a part of history.
After the break, Australia's bushfires have forced a state of emergency with no signs of letting up. Don't go anywhere.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Australia's escalating bushfires have prompted New South Wales authorities to declare a week-long state of emergency, giving them the power to forcibly evacuate people and take control of services. Tens of thousands raced to leave seaside towns as weekend temperatures and strong winds threaten widespread extreme fire danger. Troops are also preparing to evacuate the 4,000 trapped in neighboring Victoria State. More than 200 fires are burning across the southeastern states. Since September, at least 18 people have been killed, more than 1,000 homes destroyed, and 4 million hectares razed.
Given the worsening conditions we know that are ahead of us on Saturday, and given what our state's been through in the last few days, especially on New Year's Eve, we will be declaring a state of emergency from 9 a.m. tomorrow. That will last 7 days. The reason why we're doing it tomorrow, ahead of Saturday, is to make sure that Commissioner Fitzsimmons and all of the emergency personnel, all of our agencies, all organisations know that from tomorrow they will be subject to forced evacuations, road closures, road openings, and anything else we need to do as a state to keep our residents safe and to keep property safe.
In some tragic news, at least 23 people have been killed in Indonesia after the most intense rains in 24 years triggered flooding and landslides. The torrential downpours on New Year's Eve waterlogged homes and overturned cars in the Jakarta region. The capital city's major airport was forcibly closed as a result. Many had to wade through the waters to find shelter, while at least 62,000 people were evacuated out of the city. Some spent the night on the roofs of their buildings while awaiting rescue.
My son's body was covered with newspaper, and my second child passed by and people asked, "Do you know him?" If my other child hadn't passed by, we wouldn't know that my son had been killed. Water has inundated some public facilities, including Halim Airport and Cikampek toll roads and other vital places. The rivers must be normalized so that operations can be restored to normal.
The head of the armed forces in Taiwan has been killed in a helicopter crash. At least 7 other people also died when the Black Hawk helicopter made a crash landing in the mountains near Taipei. There were reports that some people may have survived. Elections are due in Taiwan on January 11th, and the president has suspended campaigning following the incident. While many celebrated the turn of the new decade, Indians mobilized in protest against the controversial citizenship law and a proposed national population register. Thousands marched in the capital, New Delhi, to decry the laws they say are anti-Muslim. The protesters have remained defiant despite attempts by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to stop the demonstrations that broke out 3 weeks ago. At least 27 people have been killed and several injured during the protests.
It will continue till the government will not revoke this bill, because this is very necessary, the need of the hour right now. Because if we stop here, then they will continue to suppress us, and we don't want that. As a government, you need to, you need to put your concentration on the real issues of the country, like unemployment, like education, not bills like CA and NRC. This is totally ridiculous and diverting people's mind from the real issues.
Japanese prosecutors have searched the home of Carlos Ghosn, the fugitive former executive of Nissan. Officials from the prosecutor's office went to the house in Tokyo 3 days after the executive arrived in Lebanon, saying he had escaped from injustice in Japan. The executive, who holds Lebanese, French and Brazilian nationalities, was facing trial for misuse of company funds. He maintains he has been the victim of persecution. The French government has said it will not extradite Ghosn if he arrives there.
If Mr. Ghosn arrives in France, we will not extradite Mr. Ghosn because France never extradites its nationals. We will apply the same rules to Mr. Ghosn as to the man in the street. But that does not prevent us from thinking that Mr. Ghosn shouldn't absconded from the Japanese justice. Simply, it's the same rights for everyone. French nationality protects.
Iran has warned the United States not to make threats after Washington blamed Tehran for protests at the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned the U.S. President that Tehran is ready to defend itself from any attack. This comes after Trump blamed Tehran for the protests and the takeover of the embassy in Baghdad.
When such incidents happen, that guy has tweeted that the United States see Iran as responsible for the events in Baghdad, and we will respond to Iran. First of all, you cannot do anything. This has nothing to do with Iran. Secondly, be reasonable, which you are not. Americans should be logical. The people of this region hate America. Why don't Americans understand this? You have committed crimes in Iraq. You have committed crimes in Afghanistan. You have killed people.
The Pacific island of Palau has started the new year with a ban on reef-toxic sunscreens and other measures to protect its coral reefs. Palau has some of the finest coral in the region, and diving is an important source of income. The government says it has evidence that chemicals found in most sunscreens are poisonous for coral, even in small doses. As the ban came into force, the president said protecting the environment was essential for the survival of Palau. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media for Telesur English. I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.